Alrighty, back inside the world's worst movie theater. We're at the top 3 worst movies I have ever seen in my life. And, speaking of sexist action movies from people who once had credibility, as we looked at The Spirit last time here, number 3 on my list is the worst movie I have ever seen from director Zack Snyder. And I think you know exactly which one I'm talking about. That movie is Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch is a fantasy steampunk action film directed by Snyder. And, the story about this is that you have Emily Browning playing a young woman who is committed to a mental institution. And in order to cope, she envisions the asylum as a brothel and teams up with 4 dancers/prisoners to escape before she undergoes a lobotomy. As she collects the items she needs to escape, she enters another level of fantasy in which the women become strong, experienced warriors. Each fantasy is a parallel to the events in the brothel. Abby Cornish, Jenna Malone, Vanessa Hudgens, and Jamie Chung portray the other 4 prisoners imagined as dancers by Baby Doll. Carla Gugino plays Dr. Vera Gorski, a psychiatrist who in Baby Doll's mind is known as Madame Gorski, a choreographer at the strip club. Oscar Isaac plays Blue Jones, the asylum's orderly who in Baby Doll's mind is the corrupt owner of the brothel. Where do you even begin with a movie as bad as this? For one thing, the music is absolutely atrocious. It's nothing but emo covers of classic songs like Sweet Dreams and Bad Ones all across the board. The score is so awful there's not even a score here. It's just bad music, bad covers, all pointed to somewhat of a score. It's like watching a bad CW TV series, or at least what the CW used to be around this time when this movie came out. But I digress. Secondly, the visuals are terrible. These are some of the worst visuals you could possibly see here, and you can't even see them at some points. That's how bad it is. This movie is way too dark, and not even for the subject matter, but you can barely see what's going on in this movie. Third, apparently Zack Snyder has a huge fetish for girls in bondage. Seriously, I was watching so many shots of these girls in these bondage and spandex clothes. I thought I was watching the beginning of a porno movie. Snyder is literally telling the audience, these girls are hot, see my movie, damn it. I mean, unless these girls start making out, there's nothing that you can do to make me like this movie. And fourth and finally, the biggest flaw I have with this movie is that the men and women in this film are stereotypical as all hell. The men in this movie are either douchebags, perverts, pedophiles, guys who start incest, or stupid. And the women in this movie are either helpless, don't do shit whatsoever whenever something happens, or act like abused housewives. It's the most offensive portrayal I've seen of both men and women in my entire life. This movie is supposed to show female empowerment and show lead female characters who can be strong, independent women and be great action heroes, and they did nothing with it because, like with Frank Miller, Zack Snyder doesn't know apparently how to write strong and independent women. It says a lot when you can compare a show like My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, where the characters on that show were strong, independently written female characters who acted like regular people most of the time. And while the creator of the show is a woman, men also contributed to writing the material for them and also gave each of them a backstory, and a good one. So, again, if a My Little Pony animated series does a better job of writing much stronger and more independent female characters than a big-budget Zack Snyder movie like this centering around female empowerment, there's a huge problem here. I think that's the first time anyone has ever compared My Little Pony to Sucker Punch in the same subject, but that's really what it feels like here. They gave this guy Superman before they even saw this movie, and again, they only gave it to him because they needed to get a Superman movie out by 2013, and they hired this guy. They hired this guy after this abysmal mess of a movie. This was the movie that's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back for Zack Snyder. I like his other movies, Dawn of the Dead, 300, Watchmen, Legend of the Guardians, but this right here is the first movie from him that I have hated. It's that awful. It's the most offensive portrayals of characters I have ever seen in my entire life. So, what could possibly, what could possibly be worse than this by Zack Snyder? destroying Superman with Man of Steel, and then following it up with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, aka this generation's Phantom Menace. But yeah, Sucker Punch was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. This is the third worst movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Plain and simple. So with all that said, what could possibly be the two worst movies I've had the unfortunate misfortune of sitting in the theater to watch? Well, if you've seen my stuff for a while now, you've got a pretty good idea of what those two movies are. But we'll get to the number 2 worst movie I've ever seen in my life next week on here. But if you want to see what I had to say about The Spirit, please go ahead and hit the video on the corner. Check out some of the other episodes I've done. And I will see you guys next week with number 2 on my list of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life.